Semana Podcast presenta.
Hello there, Brendan Wrongway Corrigan with you again for another episode of the Colombia Cast, coming to you as live from the Semana studios in Bogota. Now, the Caribbean islands of San Andrés, Providencia and Santa Catalina have been Colombian territories since the birth of the state. Indeed, they make up one of Colombia's 32 departments. Yet many of their earliest settlers, the Protestant Afro-Caribbean ethnic group known as Raizals, who have been calling the islands home since the early 1600s, haven't always felt fully in tune with the mainland, separated from it by some 750 kilometres of sea as they are. And while this Raizel population has traditionally been the dominant group on the islands, the last few years have seen, on the most populated San Andrés in any case, an increase in the number of Colombians settling there. In fact, some estimates now have the Raizals as a minority population in the archipelago. So joining us from San Andrés to chat about this Raizal culture and heritage, its place in the world today, is a gentleman we're going to refer to as George, and for safety, security reasons, we're not using his real name. He has received some threats after speaking out about this topic previously. We're also altering his voice slightly. So, George, great to speak with you, and it's one of those episodes that I wish I could do on location up in San Andrés. I'm taking it the weather is pretty nice and balmy up there.
Thank you very much, Brandon, and we would like to extend greetings from our beautiful island of San Andrés.
Thank you.
On behalf of our people, the Raizal people, we want to let you know that you're welcome to visit our island, and it won't be a challenge for you because we do speak English as our native language, and therefore it's very easy for us to communicate with our visiting Anglo-speaking visitors, and as well we do speak in Spanish, and there have been like a misconception of who we are, and we just want to take this opportunity to let people know who we are. We are a very proud people.
Yeah, well, just to explain on that, George, to go into greater detail. So the background of the Raizal, as I mentioned in the introduction, you first settled there in the 1600s. So just give us a little bit more of that background and your history.
Yes, in the 16th century, actually the Mayflower sailed from Southampton in England, and they went to Boston, Massachusetts. They got in 1621, and that was called the Company. That the Mayflower is the main ship of the British Royal Navy, and then the Seaflower, which is the sister ship, sailed from Southampton and went to Old Providence. Providence used to be our capital in the 16th century, and actually was not only the capital of the archipelago, but was the capital of the island of Corn Island in Nicaragua and Bluefield, which is known as the Mosquitoes Coast. So the central government was based down on the island of Old Providence, and there you can find like the Fort Warwick, which was intended to be where the New England, New Westminster, to be established by the Puritans and settlers that came to the island in 1630. However, the company was mainly run by Lord John Pym. I don't know if, Brandon, have you ever heard an expression that says, from the parliament to the prison?
Well, I haven't, but I can guess what it means. Go on, explain.
That is because Lord John Pym was captured in here on the island of San Andrés, specifically Old Providence in 1641. and he went to prison, and the British government, the royal government, paid for his ransom. So he came from the prison and went to the parliament. That's why in England there is this expression that says, from the parliament, from the prison to the parliament.
Okay. Well, that makes more sense. So I guess in this history, and I know there's a lot to it, but people can read up more about the Raizal culture. But in terms of the links to Colombia, I mentioned that since the birth of the Colombian state, San Andrés has been part of it. But how Colombian do you kind of feel as a spokesperson for the Raizals?
As Raizal people, our identity, we stand for being Raizal. You know, this is our nation. We have some similarities, I'll say, with the other ethnic groups of the island. It's like asking a Wayu, is this Colombia your country? I don't believe the Wayus or the Emberas will feel like 100% Colombian. So our loyalty is first to God, as we are Puritans, and second to our Raizal nation. We have to understand that we are a colony that has not been decolonized, as the United Nations calls for the decolonization of these territories in the Caribbean. We have not had the opportunity to decolonize, and as well the United Nations called for a referendum on the island, and this should be carried out by the Colombian government among the Raizal people, asking the question: would you like to be Colombian? Would you like to be independent? Would you like to be with another government? And I like to stress, what the International Court of Hague said when they made the conclusion about the dispute between Colombia and Nicaragua, which did not include the Raizal people as the owners of this territory. The judge at the Hague said, due to the fact that neither Colombia or Nicaragua has presented any substantial evidence, any tangible evidence that they own the island, historic evidence, we are taking the following determination. So they decided to have Colombia manage the island, and given Nicaragua our oceanographic territory, which has been really a great distress for us as
Can I ask, when was that declaration from the International Court in The Hague? That's in recent years, yes?
Yeah, we're talking about the recent history. That was 2012, if I may. That was in November. Was in November the 12th, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. And that pretty much why I'm bringing this conversation is because the judge was very clear to say that Colombia or Nicaragua has not presented any evidence that proves that they really own the island. Because indeed, they don't own the island. There is no document or factual evidence to prove that they own the island. People claim that, no, in 1822, we native people decided to join Colombia, but there is no evidence. We requested the national government, the Congress, to please produce copy of this document, and until this date, we have not have an answer. This was done through our beloved leader, Dr. Raymond Howard, who is recognized and acknowledged as our main leader among our people.
Okay, now you talked about San Andrés and the islands having a referendum for self-autonomy, but would it be fair to say that if that referendum was to take place today, as I mentioned in the introduction, that there are now more mainlanders from Colombia, so it wouldn't be a guarantee that you'd win that? And would that not be kind of you'd have to climb down maybe a kind of an embarrassing defeat if you were to lose a referendum on your own independence or joining another group of nations?
The mandate from the International Court is that only the ethnic group will have participation in this referendum. It wouldn't be for the people that come from outside, or even the people that were born here but are not part of the ethnic group. It's like you go into Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta and you say, hey, there's going to be a referendum, and you come from Bogota and you want to vote among the Indians in the Sierra, or you go to Guajira and you want to vote as an ethnic member of the Wayu people, that will not be possible. So the the United Nations called for the referendum to be done among the native people.
Okay, and are you convinced so that if that referendum was to take place, that the majority of Raizals would vote to have some sort of semi-autonomy? Or I remember we spoke a couple of years ago, you told me that maybe join a greater group of Caribbean nations, islands similar to yourself, like Barbados or Jamaica, things like that. So are you convinced that the Raizals would vote to leave Colombia?
This will be a mega political earthquake that will revolutionize institutions and alter the way thinking people see the islands, the country, and the world. Actually, we just had the CBU, the Caribbean Broadcast Union, was held here on the island of San Andres, and we were very happy to have our brothers from Jamaica, from Barbados, the island nations, and to know that they have been able to live independently and in a dignified way. You see, everything runs down to statistics. And sometimes people will scare and try to scare people, because intimidation is a dissuasive way to beat people off their idea, and people will tell us, no, you won't be able to survive as a country. Then how come these island nations are surviving, and some for example, Cayman Island, they're not a nation, but they have somewhat independence. They can decide certain things. You have Jamaica, you have Barbados, which is a nation, and we as well can do the same. We can do the same, and we can survive. For example, Jamaica, St. Lucia, whose economy runs by tourism, and these are sister islands that we have had the opportunity to visit. I've been many times to Jamaica, to Barbados, and most of the islands, double checking and see what they're doing, how they're doing, the immigration, the legislation that they have in place to protect the environment, to protect their people. And it's amazing to see that other governments are doing much more. For example, if you go to Bermuda, even though you are a British national, you won't be able to just reside there because you're British. You will have 21 days to be there. San Andres, we have an issue in terms of people coming from the mainland, especially after 2010, when the paramilitary groups started stepping into the island. And along with that, we notice great social disruption, executions, paramilitary style on our island. People were being executed, young people that trained to operate as paramilitary as well. So right here at the island.
But that's interesting at that point, in a sense that when I was there a couple of years ago, I spoke obviously to mainlanders, if we'll call them, Colombians, and the Raizel population. And not that I'm trying to create a division, because it's not like it's very divisive, I'd have to say. I thought there was a nice mix amongst the different populations and the different groups there. But I did notice that some of the Raizals were saying it's this influx from the mainland that are damaging it. And in some ways the population, it depends what you read, but it's increased by up to 3 times in the last 20 years or something like that. That it's the mainlanders damaging the island. And then I spoke to some Colombians and they go, well, the Raizals don't respect their own place. So there seems to be this little bit of conflict, but you would be of the opinion that it's had too much of an influx of a population, and that's brought with it all these various social problems and environmental problems.
We have our balance sheet. And we do our accounting, and they have their balance sheet. If you look at our balance sheet, then from our perspective, we have been outrun. And, all those vices that came from the mainland and introduced here in our island have affected us. It's an ambiguous situation, but the reality is that from our perspective, when we used to live before 1952, we didn't need people to come and take garbage away from the street. No, we did that ourselves. We didn't need to have police forces. We didn't need to have army forces. We did not need those institutions here on the island, and we run our island on our own until 1952, because it's after 1952 when the Freeport was created for them, because was a hostage for us, because we did not have the opportunity to participate in the so-called Freeport. And a matter of fact that our industries that we had here, we were the number 1 exporters of coconut to the United States, number 1 exporters of coconut to the United States. We exported oranges to Cartagena and to Costa Rica, and now we have to be important because our industries were destroyed. Actually, where we had our factory, now it's a military base that was taken away from us by the military force. And this is something that we fought, but they own the weapons. We don't have weapons to stand against them. So they took all this land away from us, and now they have a military base there. Right now, Raizal people are fighting to get back another property that the police force took away and have no means to show how they get it. How did they bought it from someone? No, they just occupy the land. As you know, in the Colombian government, they have a figure that they call in tierras baldías, which are lands that are not owned by anyone, but every single property here on the island is owned by an individual. But of course, we never knew that the Colombian government had such a mechanism to expropriate our land, and it was taken away. It was the British crown who divided the island. And in the division was given to initially 3 families, the May, the Bowie, and the Levers.
Mm-hmm.
They were the 3 main families that were given the island by the British government. And actually, my grandparents, we had a document, seal, sort of royal seal. And
Okay.
we have been occupying this land where I live for more than 300 years.
Just to be clear as well, the island was unoccupied, uninhabited before the first Protestant Afro-Caribbean settlers came there. Is that true? There was nobody there before.
When Christopher Columbus came to the America, only the major islands were occupied.
Okay.
And regretfully, all the Taínos Indians were extinguished in Jamaica, for example, in Margarita Island, for example. But the lesser islands, the smaller islands like San Andrés, were not occupied.
Okay.
The Taínos Indians used to come from Central America and every now and then to fish, but they never settled down here in the island. And when the British came in 1630, when they came, the island was unoccupied, and they settled on the island of old Providence because of the fortification possibilities that they had there.
Okay.
It was fortified, and that's the reason why our island is known as Old Providence, because there's another island in the Caribbean which is called Providence, is New Providence in the Bahamas,
Okay.
the Bahamian island.
So I just want to say, everything you've said about Colombia leading up to that, basically, and this will surprise, I think, many Colombians who aren't aware of the situation, that it basically sounds, what you're saying, is that it's neo-colonialism. Is that fair to say?
Yes, indeed, that's correct. If we got to look at things in a holistic way to understand pragmatically what is colonialism. And then once you define what is colonialism and you look at the characteristic of the people of this island, then the conclusion is, yes, we are a colony of the Colombian government.
So, just to finish up, I guess, do you fear for the Raizal culture, or do you think, by obviously via podcasts like this and getting the message out there, because I think to the wider world, I'm from Ireland, I'm not sure many people are they even aware of the existence of San Andrés and that it's a part of Colombia. People in Britain, I'm not even sure would they know it. So, do you fear, though, for your future? Do you think that you can survive and thrive, more importantly?
Most educated Raizal people will just leave the island or shut up and deny themselves. If you want to survive in this system, it's just like when did you know that 30% of the words, the English words, came from the French language?
Well, yeah, I had a fair idea. I wasn't sure it was that high, but yes.
Because the British crown was occupied in the 12th century by a French prince. So the people from England who wanted to feel themselves part of the aristocracy started to use French and mix it with English. So actually what is happening here is that our young people don't want to use English anymore, or at times they have been convinced by the teachers, by the institutions, that we don't speak English. I just want to stress that what I'm saying, the way I'm speaking is not that I have been to an English school elsewhere, maybe in the United States or Britain or right in Colombia. No, my English was taught to me by my parents, by our spiritual leaders. If you come to our island and you go to the church on Sunday, I'm strongly convinced that everything that is said there, you will be able to understand it. But there is a movement of people in the mainland that try to convince the public in general that we don't speak English. So, of course, I believe within the next maybe 20, 30 years, the following generations will not speak English as a native language if we don't do something before it is too late.
Yeah, sorry, did you want to say something at the end?
We need some structural adjustment in the educational aspect, economically, military, and politically speaking. We need some adjustment. In the educational aspect, we need to reinforce English in the school. In the schools, yes, there is an English program, but really our children are not learning English in the schools.
Are there Raizel teachers employed in the schools there, or are there more mainlanders?
Well, actually, we have, for example, the First Baptist School is a privately run school by the First Baptist Church, and you have mainly Raizel people. And we are proud to say that many times this school has received the highest qualification in the Pruebas del Saber, not only locally but on the national standards. We have had some excellent students, and we have had some support from the Baylor University in the United States, and we have had some support from various Baptist organizations in the United States, and that have helped us. We are making some significant contacts with the Jamaican government. As they say, yeah, man.
Yeah.
We are making contacts with them, and we have had the visit of Congressman Gregory Mix, who came here. He was actually surprised to know that we could speak English. He's from the district of he's from New York. He's a congressman from New York, and we are following him closely. And we need, in the military sense, maybe 1% of the armed forces, like the police and the army force. Maybe we have 1 or 0.8% of native people. So what happens is that these organizations serve more to intimidate the local people, native people, and to protect the interests of the Colombian government and their people, not our people.
Yeah, well, I guess just to finish this up, as I said, getting the message out there, the future is uncertain, but what we can only hope is that we do like to preserve cultures, and that maybe a balance can be found if your future is with Colombia, that there's greater respect for your way of life, your English language, as you said, and your various cultures that are quite distinct. Do you think, just finally, do you think that maybe in mainland Colombia there's more respect towards the indigenous here, and that because you're 750 kilometers away in the middle of the Caribbean, that there's less knowledge of your situation and less support?
I regret the situation that the Indians, in a special way, and the black people are suffering in mainland Colombia. extrajudicial execution, displacement from their territories. We do regret that, and our heart goes out for them. But as well, if there is anyone that would like to help the native people, I have this request for them. Please fulfill the law 915 from 1993. It's like a roadmap. If you fulfill that for us, we will have it will be like a milestone in our history. I will say this in Spanish. Para elevar el artículo 310 de la Constitución a ley de la República. This is to have the Article 310 becomes law, national law in the country, because after 1991 we had a great expectation with the new Constitution. We thought that Article 310, Article 10 of the Constitution will guarantee some of our fundamental rights, but this has not happened yet. So those are some of the things that you could start, you could work on.
Okay.
The law 2762, and that will be helpful in regards to the protection of the environment. The law 91 will be a great mechanism to defend our environment. These are Colombian national laws that they have, and we would like to have them become like tangible in our lives, like to see them be a reality here in our territory.
Well, look, George, I guess with people like you speaking up for the Raizal cause and your culture and your history and your future, more importantly, I'm sure that we can preserve it and see it flourish. But we've got to leave it there. So I thank you very much for joining us here on the Colombia Cast, and I hope I can make it to San Andrés, make a return visit in the next year or whatever. But that is our lot for this episode of the Colombia Cast. If there's any of the issues that we've raised in this, you want to get in touch with us, you can get in touch with me via Facebook. It's at Wrong Way Corrigan blog, or on my Twitter handle at WWayCorrigan. And that is Raizals, of course. If you want to check those out, a quick search on the internet, and you'll find a lot more about that. But that is it for this episode. Ciao, ciao.
Semana.com